and it's phenomenal. Sometimes you need a good A to B car, and this does it perfectly with the right amount of flair. You get these really cool looking wheels, you have this gorgeous blue paint, sharper lines in your hood, have a painted lower grille, and updated headlights. In the back you get this black spoiler, straight up Honda Accord taillights, and if I open the trunk, you have a ton of space. Inside, you get this giant panoramic roof. My seats are heated and ventilated. I have a touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and built-in Wi-Fi. I have a head-up display, a digital display. This camera can let me know if I'm falling asleep. My steering wheel is heated and it can steer for me on the highway. I have a wireless charging pad and a Jibble sound system. The back has decent room, cup holders, vents, charging ports, and under the hood, you get a 10-liter quad-turbo W16. It makes 2,644 horsepower going to all four wheels with a sequential gear. Just kidding. It's a hybrid four-cylinder that makes 225 horsepower and gets 48 miles per gallon. Quad-turbo W16 can't do that. Behind me is an updated Toyota Camry, and it's phenomenal. Sometimes you
How to battle Lupe Fiascos. Win. 4 things that you have to constantly keep in mind. The first one is intention. You gotta have an intention.
Have you ever seen somebody that remind you of you and you said, holy shit, Lupe Fiasco?
Second one, authenticity.
I don't know. I really fucked with Lupe when he came out, obviously. Like, you know, before Touch the Sky was fucking crazy. Kick Push was fucking phenomenal as well. When he got into like ninja stores and all that shit.
If you have the authenticity from the door, you're not fishing for a reaction. Because when it's authentic, you don't need a reaction.
I'm not really interested in battling ropes, but don't get it fucked up. That don't mean I won't push niggas. If niggas keep pushing buttons, I don't want to do that shit personally. But if you want to make a professional fool of your motherfucking self, running up against a demon, go ahead.
Thirdly, and this relates to authenticity, is time.
Did rapper Lupe Fiasco go too far when he called President Obama a terrorist?
You know, the root cause of terrorism is the stuff that the U.S. government allows to happen. You know, and the foreign policies that we have in place in different countries that inspire people to become terrorists.
The fourth one, I am my greatest enemy. There is nobody out there in the world, nowhere, that can do me like I can do myself. I'm my own worst enemy. I go against the grain way too much. I disagree way too much. I bring up too much counterpoint. I always point out contradiction. So all you gotta do
You thought
is
I was
wait.
gone for good.
So a few months ago, I was on a road trip with my family, and I was doing all the driving, and I don't like that. I'm not a road trip type of guy. I get sleepy easily. I don't like driving at night. I don't like driving in other places. And with children in the back, it's always just an ordeal. So one of the things I like to do is just play the entire discography of one of my all-time favorite artists. That helps the children go to sleep. It helps me kind of tune out all the anxiety, and it reconnects me with music
You thought I was
that is
gone for
meaningful.
good.
Almost every road trip is the same people. It's the Roots, it's the Mars Volta, it's He Who Shall Not Be Named, it's Kendrick Lamar, and it's Tour. But this particular trip, for some reason, I picked Lupe Fiasco, partly because I realized that I hadn't given his most recent album, Samurai, a serious listen, and partly because it had been a while since I dove through his discography. The way my life is set up now, it's just hard to make time to like listen to music like I used to. I work from home now, obviously as a YouTuber, so I don't have a morning commute, and I don't work morning back, but I do miss the fact that I was opportunity to spend time with all of the most recent releases in music or podcasts. So any Lupe fan will tell you, he really should never be background noise. Lupe is one of the few mainstream rappers which I truly appreciate the album Rolling On or Playthrough. You really shouldn't be doing anything else but paying attention to what's happening. If you truly want to get Lupe, you have to really listen to what he's saying. It's hard being a Lupe fan. And it's hard being a Lupe fan because it's easy to misunderstand. I mean, we're talking about lyrics allegedly caused the creation of the website. However, I have to admit, after a little over a decade listening to Lupe Fiasco, sitting down, taking in the music with attention, doing everything short of keeping lyric genius open while going through the lyrics, I find myself wondering, do I really understand Lupe better than anyone else? I wonder if anyone has ever fully understood Lupe. In fact, if there were a list of words I've used to describe Lupe and his legacy within hip-hop, it includes terms like lyricist, rebel, genius, real, but also poorly understood. And this misunderstanding isn't just his complex, cryptic lyrical content or his seemingly schizophrenic alteration between attempts at pop chart success and the most nerdy hip-hop shit you've ever seen. It's also in what Lupe is about, what he values, and what he's trying to do with hip-hop and culture, and now technology. And most interestingly to me, why he's trying to do these things, whatever those things may be. In the past few years, Lupe has mostly been discussed for one of three reasons: promoting his new albums, for which he's released 2 since 2022, the critically acclaimed Drill Music of Zion, an album Lupe says he only worked on for a couple of weeks, and the aforementioned Samurai, another Lupe's high-concept Galaxy Brain project, where he imagines an alternative universe where Amy Winehouse is a rapper.
I'm gonna kill you because I'm a samurai.
We'll get to it. The second reason he's been in the news is the appearances he's made throughout hip-hop media, where he voiced his indifference for the biggest moment of hip-hop ever over the last decade and seemingly continued a history of perceived slights toward one Lamar, the current biggest rapper in the world, and a rapper that he shares a lot of DNA with, if you know, something that many people perceive as driven by jealousy.
What's up, brother?
What brings you to our room of negativity?
But everybody responded to Control.
I know, me too.
Yeah, everybody. So even you. But I never dissed him. That was just the Control response. And I wasn't even talking to him. I was kind of talking to his fans.
And more alarmingly, during that same time, he was personally training in AI how to be a rapper, which is downright scary in his reputation.
Glass of water held up to the lips of a marauder. That's text effects. So now no response. Yeah. And that. A glass of water held up to the lips of the marauder. Dry and flaky, looking like they haven't had a sip in days.
And it has a lot of people who call themselves Lupe fans, wondering just how hard is it supposed to be a Lupe. This is not your typical list of headlines that you might get from an A-list rap icon. A rapper who was once one of the biggest rising stars in the industry, a multi-platinum selling rapper who was also so dedicated to righteousness that he sacrificed all that success at the highest point of his career, a rapper who has always landed on the right side of history, even when we don't appreciate him in the moment of landing on that right side. Is the AI thing gonna be yet another situation where he's just ahead of the curve? Or will it be a situation where he outthought the room and we all suffer from it? In my head, it's hard to even conceptualize that all these things, all these different personas that I've described up to this point are embodied in one person. But that's in my head. And as I said earlier, I don't know if I understand Lupe Fiasco. I don't think anyone does. But Lupe Fiasco is my favorite rapper, so I wrote a 15,000-word essay to try to figure him out.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
After what Hydra did to me, this fight got a lot more personal.
Before I start, I just want to let it be known that this is going to be really parasocial. This is going to be the most parasocial y'all have seen me since, I guess, Lauryn Hill, but it's going to be worse. And I'm saying that because if anyone should know how weird and like awkward parasocial relationships are, it should be me as a big YouTuber now. I constantly deal with that weird feeling you get where you realize that there are people out in the world who know you on a pretty deep level, but you don't know anything about them. Not only do I feel like I know Lupe Fiasco, I kinda know Lupe Fiasco and he doesn't realize it. I don't mean this based on me being a huge fan. It's based on the fact that me and Lupe low-key had very similar upbringings on the south side and south suburbs of Chicago. We were both born in Chicago in the early 80s. Lupe Fiasco is actually only a few months older than me. We're both big nerds growing up in a time where being a black nerd wasn't as cool as it is now. But it even gets deeper because our parents ran in similar circles. In fact, my dad knows his dad, and I'm pretty confident that I probably met his dad numerous times as a child because his dad was a notable figure within the community that my parents ran in and talked right into several of my older cousins and my older brother. And this is all stuff I didn't remember when I was reintroduced to him as a young adult, and I didn't know that I was meeting Lupe Fiasco's father. I just was meeting someone that my father told me has known me since I was a child. If you watch my Hotep video, or you watch me for a long time, then you've heard me talk about being brought up in Afrocentric circles in Chicago, and many of those Afrocentric circles eventually became Muslim circles. Not Nation of Islam, which is important, but Muslim circles. These spaces and the adults in them shape me in a lot of ways, for better and worse, and not just me, but some of Chicago's hip-hop legends, including not just Lupe Fiasco, but Common and Kanye West. I know people that know all of their people. So you should know that Chicago was the home of Fred Hampton and the epicenter of the Black Panther Party for a second. And like real radical black activity in the late 60s, of which Lupe Fiasco's father, Gregory, known to me as Brother Jaco, was a huge part of. However, the CIA and the Chicago police and the FBI and so many people infiltrated this movement in Chicago, resulting in rampant misinformation, surveillance, infighting, which culminated in the assassination of Fred Hampton in 1969. This left a volatile, burgeoning movement of young black people splintered throughout the city. And as I mentioned in the Hotep video, what those different splinter groups got up to varied on a significant level. Some stayed radical, stayed leftist, principled, continued to fight against racism and capitalism for decades to come. Some became a little bit more moderate. Some became completely compromised and bought into the system and moved away from the radical traditions. Some got really weird and started cults low-key. A lot of these folks returned to the streets. Fred Hampton was well known. One of the most dangerous things he did was organize street gangs in Chicago. That's one of the reasons why they took him out. And some did all of the above, because that was a large, varied group of people doing significant things. My mother and father were both in that large, varied group of people. That's how they met. And my father, as I said, knew Lupe Fiasco's father, as did my late aunt, as did her ex-husband, my uncle, who I talked to before this video, and he was able to tell me that, yes, Brother Jaco, as I called him, was a staple in this community, a bit of a local legend. He was a legend because he was kind of a badass. My understanding is that he was a security enforcer type for the Panthers because he was ex-military, because he was trained in karate, and because he was a weapons master. Thus, he was responsible for teaching self-defense, and even after the radical movement broke down, he became entrenched in the community, as I said earlier, by teaching karate to many black children in Chicago.
I did not learn karate or martial arts or the samurai arts from a Japanese person.
Yes.
I didn't learn it from an Asian person at all. I learned it from my father, who was the blackest of black, grew up in the projects in Chicago, Robert Taylor homes. Black man learned it in Robert Taylor homes, learned martial arts and taught martial arts in the projects of Chicago. Right? For me, it was black. Right? It wasn't like a different culture. It was our culture because there was a Pan-African flag in there. There was also a djembe drum, there was also a hood, and those other things. So for me, it was never separate from the culture. And the way my dad always put it out, he learned martial arts from a Korean guy. Who was teaching, he could only learn it from a Korean guy because the Japanese people were told by the FBI not to teach black people at the time because they were dealing with Black Panthers and even the gangs in Chicago, Vice Lord, all those things that were on watch from the FBI. And I was like, well, you definitely can't teach them how to fight. You know, that's why the Nation of Islam had to teach themselves their forms of martial arts and jiu-jitsu. But they wouldn't do it. So it took like a Korean guy by the name of Master Shim, who's actually still alive in Chicago, to teach my dad and teach him karate, teach him other things. And my dad took those lessons and took him back to the hood.
Along with karate, he also played the African drum, something that I was taught as as a young kid, which means it's possible I was in one of his classes. And he was known for not taking shit from people. According to one of my relatives, he was so intense that he would even have kids practicing karate barefoot in the Chicago snow. He also owned a military surplus store, which gave him access to a ton of weapons. But one time I visited his house as a young man, I'll never forget, he had the dirty, hairy, like long-nosed pistol hanging up on the coat rack, and katanas and ninja stars in a closet open not too far from there. He was a unique man that, I can surmise, wasn't super easy to get along with, but definitely didn't take shit from anyone and was always respected. And so although, again, me and Lupe don't know each other, I can imagine that at some point in time we crossed paths considering how close-knit this community in Chicago was. So I bring all this up not just because of this parasocial urge to show you how well I think I know Lupe, but also to point out that whether or not I know Lupe, he's going to be incredibly complex to understand regardless because of the uniqueness of his childhood. Lupe experienced a childhood full of paradoxes and contradictions. All of our parents were these former radical militants who only a few decades before we were born were literally preparing for open insurrection against the American government. But now, many were working union jobs, driving buses, or getting advanced degrees, trying to raise their children and move on with their lives. Unlike my mother, who took me and my older siblings to the nicest south suburbs that she could get access to and kind of cocooned us away from the streets, Lupe lived with his dad for chunks of his life in various areas of Chicago's west and south side before landing in Harvey, which is also a south suburb, but not quite as nice as the one I was in. Chicago suburbs are different than how you imagine suburbs, at least many of them on the south side. If you know, you know. But Lupe spoken at length about being exposed to this culture in Chicago streets, but most of that existed outside of the walls of his home. Because within his home, there was order, there was discipline, there was some art, there was philosophy. Lupe has told stories of his father confronting drug dealers who lived next door, as well as him chilling in his house reading National Geographic while witnessing violence outside his window. He was able to do that because, again, his father was a badass and was known not to be fucked with, which is an important detail because it brings us into the paradox that Lupe will become as a rapper throughout his career, but also the young man he was before he became a rapper. Lupe has kept no secrets about being a big nerd as a kid, and this is the 90s with nerdy, black, aren't as familiar a concept as they are today. Like, shout out to Nerdist Joe and Think Peace Tribe. We're here in Atlanta for Momo-Con, dressing up as anime characters and shit. That is dope. I went there a couple of years ago. I love that for them. Back in my day, that's how niggas got beat up. And unlike Lupe, I didn't know how to fight that well in middle school. So it's good that I was in the suburbs. But in between reading National Geographic and getting good at Street Fighter, Lupe was learning how to shoot assault rifles and becoming a black belt in karate. And so at a time when he would have been highly targeted for his nerd status, he could also knock your ass out, which I'm sure he had to do once or twice considering the way nerds were targeted at that time, especially black nerds.
And on nail guns, right? So my dad made these nail guns. He used to sit and stand on the nail guns. My dad would make a bed of coal. He would start a fire, make the coal, and break the coal down. Think of the machine gun. And he would stand on the stands. And my dad would just hit us. Light us up to the against the world. So for me, like physically, and the things I've been doing physically since I was 5. Yeah. Right? And the thing, my father would say, go fight that. Like, you have to go fight that. Or go jump over that wall. Or jump out that window. Or jump over that car. This is all child abuse. This is DCFS. Hey, DCFS, like, listen, it's too late now. It's too late now. Too late now. You're 42, though. My father's passed, and I think the statute of limitations is up. But this was a daily occurrence.
Wow.
You know, this was our house. This is where we lived. So take all of that and put that into like, yo, this dude want to rap against you.
Okay.
Got it.
So okay. So Royce didn't know what he was in for.
Stop it.
And I think this experience, I do not know, but I imagine gleaming from his art and his interviews and the way he's moved through the industry that Lupe developed a deep persecution complex early on in his life, possibly becoming hyper-vigilant to any perceived slight. And if you're a hardcore Lupe fan, you've heard him touch on this throughout his career. Minor beefs and skirmishes with other artists, major beefs with his record label, the constant antagonism toward the hip-hop press, and even being blackballed from the industry as a whole. I call it a persecution complex, but when you look at the totality of Lupe's career, it might just be plain old persecution. So there's a lot going on in Lupe's background, but I think I have the perfect vessel for making sense of it by comparing Lupe to a character from the classic Japanese manga Akira, a character who Lupe himself has shown an affinity for, Tetsuo.
I'm just playing on my Smurf right now.
Akira is one of the most important pieces of
If you want to
media
run some
in
comp though,
existence.
I'll
It's
get
one
back
of
on
the
my
reasons
main.
why anime and manga exist
I'm not even
today
level
and
10 yet
lives
on my
at all.
Smurf,
It's
dog.
one
It
of the
takes
most
so long to
iconic
get to level
sci-fi
15,
and
dude.
Cyberpunk to ever exist, and is influential in ways that I really can't get into right now. Kanye West has left traces of this story all over his art for years. You've seen a million references to his animation in a million different anime, and it doesn't surprise me that it touched Lupe, considering that it emerged when we were kids, in a time that many nerds immediately would have identified with his complex antagonist, Tetsuo. Tetsuo isn't some mustache-twirling villain. You empathize with him, but not in the same way it might be with other interesting and charismatic villains like Killmonger or the Joker. You don't want to emulate Tetsuo. You don't necessarily want to do what it's doing, but you wish you could, especially if you were a nerd, because you completely understand why he's doing the thing he does. You understand the way he feels. See, Tetsuo's main challenge is the feeling of insecurity and
Somebody
inadequacy
actually
in a
saw my
harsh
stream,
and
dude.
unforgiving world that is
That was
overly
actually
hostile
pretty
to him
exciting
at all
earlier
times.
today.
And ironically,
Some random
the
dude
only
named Mark
person that treats him with
hopped
any care
into
is
my
his
stream.
best friend and rival, Canada. Is it Canada or Canada? Oh shit, it's Canada, right?
Kaneda.
Kaneda. Unlike Tetsuo, Canada is built to survive the world that they're in,
Alright.
while Tetsuo
So,
is very much
you wanna
in a
run
smooth
comp,
friendship
or
and
we don't
guidance
even have
with
to play
Kaneda
rivals, honestly.
that Tetsuo has made it as far as he does. Kaneda's care for Tetsuo clashes with Tetsuo's own sense of self-loathing, so
Let's see. Are you on your Smurf or are you on your main?
I'm on my main.
Alright.
Question is how hectic do you want it?